So you actually have to listen and watch the entirety so that way you could actually think. I'm a big proponent of actual, genuine thought and truth. So Joe Rogan acknowledged that he does MMA or has done MMA. I only did Taekwondo as a child. I mean, I did gymnastics first, and okay, I went to an international competition, and I explained that in the prior YouTube official video that I uploaded. Again, subscribe to my channel, please. Thank you. And encourage others to do so as well. So, the individual on episode 1208, I'm going to put that in the actual description for that particular reference point, because that's important. To give credit where credit is actually due, which they actually discuss in that particular episode. Now, I have had this discussion in person, face-to-face in person, more often than I have in writing. And where I've had it is randomly throughout because I've been a beard before. I was born and raised in New Jersey, and in the 1980s and 1990s, there are those who know about those particular factors. Everybody has a biological mother. Whatever your particular opinion is as far as how your childhood went, your teenage years, and all that sort of stuff, myself included, obviously. However, there is not one person on Earth who doesn't have that X chromosome. It's kind of part of it. That's why there's the XX or the XY chromosome. So, I've been a big proponent of the LGBTQP aspects. I am a pansexual. I've described that in a different official YouTube video, but also in writing and well before that in description once I came to the wording because of the after effects from my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. Now, in those particular references, I'm the one who took care of myself. I also took care of my son, my daughter, on my own in those particular references. I raised my son, I raised my daughter as best as I could, despite the circumstances at those times. And so, in regards of before my head injury, when in New Jersey, going to the 5 boroughs, and whatnot like that, my biological mother especially had a huge issue with Soho area, which is not a borough, but it's within one of the 5 boroughs. And she also had a problem with the equivalent of 42nd Street in every borough, because every borough had it, especially in the 1980s. In the 1990s, it started getting cleaned up. So I've been a beard, I've been, my babysitter's eldest son, and it's not to be rude, it is a stereotype to a degree, but he dressed me. Not today, the 9th of April 2022, but he did dress me in regards of, because I was the only child who didn't make fun of him for how he this point in time in 2022, I learned that there's another term for baking, or I guess it's just bake. However, I'm one of those. So I was a huge square, but I was massively open-minded. And so out of the children that his mom babysat, out of all of them, and of course their parents, and those references, because of knowing that came to his mom and dad's house, I was the only child that wouldn't make fun of how he spoke, wouldn't make fun of how he dressed, and wouldn't not fight him on being dressed up, but I would actually assist. So he had earned being capable to win a challenge, where one Christmas, there was this statewide and nationwide, or tri-state area-wide competition for the Gap store. And he had earned being capable to have a year minimum at the Gap quarters or something another in New York City, from what he had put together as far as that was concerned for the decorations. His mom was really into the holiday Barbie stuff. Like, she collected holiday Barbie and had like years, and he studied the different dresses and stuff like that, and I was one of the only, if not the only child who would listen to him when he would go over the different details of what he liked about different, stuff as far as that's concerned. And so that's the starting point before I go into this. Because that's important by a lot. Other than adding, in Illinois, after I was moved there in 1998, there were a few, but one in particular stood out, and he had a girlfriend or a beard. And it was funny in certain regards because, the girlfriend would be like, "Oh, kisses!" And he'd be like, those understands, sort of thing, and it's like, "Oh, girl, let me tell you, there are some, don't argue, I get it." And so, and there were a lot of people in Crystal Lake South who were like, "What do you mean?" And it's like, I know better, girl, when you are ready, I got you. And so, and he went on to American Idol in the first season, Jimmy. And so I remember we had these little cheeks, and on his face, let me clarify, I'm sure that he has found some, whatever aspects of, and that's fine. It's like, no matter, oh my God, Jesus, because, I am a mom, and I did give birth to my son the year, which is an irony because my son's name is James. And so it is an irony in those particular references. Nonetheless, and unlike his sister's biological father, I personally, you can simply take a look at my hairstyle and be quite, okay, I'm not a lesbian. There was the situation in reference to figuring out the word for pansexual, because I knew I wasn't bi. I knew I wasn't a lesbian per se. I knew I preferred certain aspects of certain things, but to the levels of and what my personality and everybody, especially in the 2000 time frame, after the turn of the millennium, had really a difficult time finding words for the specifics as to personality traits, as they discussed on the Rogan experience, especially in 1208, the preferences. And so, that's fine. And I can also make a joke, but it's the truth. I listened to Howard Stern in the 1990s, and there was a guy who had called in about, he had said he was a biological male, but a lesbian. But born as a lesbian, or he was a lesbian trapped in a male's body, or something along those lines. And I thought that was hilarious, because I was like, so, I'm a pansexual, or in my definition, I'm a gay bear trapped inside of a female's body, but every now and then I do a little bit of, I guess it's considered drag-ish. Which, there's the RuPaul Drag Race, and those who know, I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000 during basic training. And after waking up from my coma, I deal with headaches and migraines. Anybody who has seen RuPaul's Drag Race, and there's this thing called light sensitivity. I figured it out in 2022 about my issues regarding that, but I was so excited because of actually seeing on the screen, different situations in reference to the gay drag queen. I don't know if they had any heterosexuals or maybe heteroflexibles on there. I know there was a season where there was a transgender and so on and so forth. And great, awesome. Except for one particular factor. And that is in sports. In my opinion. This is the controversial aspect. I don't personally see a problem with it at all. I don't care if you are a male who wants to become a female or a female who wants to become a male. Doctors, aspects, fine, whatever. If you're wanting to stay as that XX chromosome compared to the XY chromosome, whatever, you're born biologically, especially since the Democratic Party or the left is extremely scientific. So, if you want to go in whatever gender, whatever, fine. You know what? When you're born, you're either born XX or you're born XY. Okay? As far as chromosomes. As far as the right side or the Republican side, which is the capitalist side, because you cannot be a person who is in certain factors and claim certain things if you are not into capitalism. If you want everything to be equal, then you, whatever LGBTQP and or supposed to be adult consenting lifestyle, officially you are considered a hypocrite. If you have any problem with somebody else being a capitalist, period, end of story, no way out of it. So, there are those who know about my official FetLife first account, Lady Dory Bell. I've thankfully been capable to get my name back and all that sort of stuff after what I had discussed with people in person, face-to-face in person, before finding a silver lining and finding the silver lining. But the needless drama from certain types because of their lack of willingness to actually ask me, because the majority of certain types in what's supposed to be the adult consenting lifestyle had whatever assumptions as far as they're concerned. The reality, though, is you are looking at in the year of 2022 the situations in reference to COVID. And, there are certain types you just can't have that employment because of the consequence over issues, but that is their issues. If they don't like competition and they prefer communism, then that's how that goes. But, you know, I don't have any proof on that after how I wound up in Washington State and those particular factors. I have no idea what happened, as I was told 5 years before 2020. And so that is what it is. That is what it is. So, in those particular factors, in order to have certain things, there are those who understand those principles. And if you on your own are capable, well, you don't pay attention to certain competitive aspects, because depending on what's going on in your life and what's more important and those particular aspects. So I'm about, having been involved in gymnastics, having been involved in the ways of martial arts, more specifically Taekwondo, and having gone to competition, that's how it goes. It's part of it. And so you can either, in a capitalist society, lift others up in comparison to communism, or that's it. that's how that goes, you know. So I don't have a problem with the transgender transitioning. I actually created a painting that was inspired by the name Caitlyn Jenner, but also in reference to people that I had known personally in the 1980s and 1990s, in mainly New York City, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia. I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. I have memory deficits and cognitive disorders. I have memories from my childhood other than my babysitter's son and daughter. However, unfortunately, possibly fortunately, I don't know, it is a bittersweet, double-edged sword, because sometimes I can remember names, but not necessarily faces. Other times I can remember faces, but not necessarily the names. And with as much of a difference as there is to the New York City skyline, well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. Certain references. So, but as far as physical competition, that is completely different than intellectual competition. Intellectual competition, as far as intellectual property rights, intellectual competition in reference to ideas and philosophies and theoretical developments and so on and so forth, patents, etc. Automatic. So, you know, some of my books, despite the genres they are written in, are considered legal patents at the same time of those copyrights. Because they are considered legal patents, because especially in reference to the Paroxysm of the Lotus book series, Volume 1, Complicated Simplicity, that is a patent, despite it being written as an erotic fiction, by law. Same thing in reference to Paroxysm of the Lotus, Volume 3, Celestial Chastisements, by law. That's facts. It's not only a copyright at the same time of patents, it's also trademarked, and it's covered in every legal capacity, especially with my legal first name and my legal bibliography in the back, automatically, because of my first two books having been written as an autobiography up to that point in time, with the specific verifications and proofs thereof, those facts. So, I didn't go over that really in depth, but it is what it is as far as those particular realities. So, but I've known that. Because I was born and raised in New Jersey, and maybe there's a lawyer somewhere in New Jersey, New York City, or Pennsylvania somewhere, or that travels through the areas, please. However, there's also those libraries and colleges and etc. So in reference to competition, though, in the non-intellectual capacity, which intellectual, it doesn't matter if biological aspects XX or XY at birth. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your sexuality is. It doesn't matter what your ethnic background is. That is the only area where you're allowed by certain intellectual aspects, with the exception of the legal rights, but for discussions, because that's an intellectual capacity, communist, more progressive, more along the lines of democratic factors. That's that portion, the intellectual. However, the physical competition, that is the difference. There is a certain portion of that, with the exception of the biological factor, which is an irony in some references because of the Republican side, or the conservative side, or whatever portion in that reference to the wording. So, again, pansexual, having been a beard, my babysitter's son, daughter, the areas of the 1980s and 1990s, in particular references, so on and so forth. In those references, it only makes sense to actually have specifics of, and nobody on the left in the Democratic side can truthfully deny this. So, in regards of Joe Rogan Experience 1208 episode, you do have the facts. You have the, if you don't want to do it by gender, pronoun, or whatever scientific, what have you, fine. It's XX at birth and XY at birth, as far as the genetics for the gender. In reference to physical competition, you have the, however, terminology as far as, you have the XX competition, whether in martial arts, boxing, dancing, whatever. You also have the XY in martial arts, boxing, dancing, gymnastics, figure skating, whatever sports of. And then, if you want to go in the transgender route, because if you just do it as XX and XY, it doesn't matter. You still maintain those two. However, in the reality of, in my opinion, and I know I'm not the only one, if you have an XX that wants the transgender and vice versa, as far as the XY regarding transgender, it does not change your chromosome. So you can physically look how you choose to physically look, and your sexuality, ethnic background, all those combinations of in those physical competitions of whatever type, that is as far as biological. That's the reality. I knew people who were in the 1990s who started, when they were literally talking about this was parents, these were actual parents, and they were mainly females. So they're the mothers, legal guardians, grandmothers, and stuff like this. This happened these discussions where they were talking about the 1993 attack that led to Desert Storm and Desert Shield. And they were afraid, especially because I had told people about my second grade nightmare by that point in time, they were afraid of the equivalent of Vietnam occurring, as they had learned that their sons had to automatically sign up for the draft. And there was discussions from people that were equivalent of hippies, some that turned into yuppies in the 1980s, but hippies that didn't want to have a part of the draft and they wanted to save their sons. I, being the child I was and person that I am, well, you know, if you just make the draft automatic for whichever gender, automatically, at the age of 18, you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, I'll just leave that at that because I'm sure there are some who can take in consideration of that. I have a daughter and I have a son. I gave birth to my son first and I gave birth to my daughter after. I personally fought to be a part of the Army branch. That is where my head injury happened during basic training. I was invited to attend Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment. I have been a supporter of, because I appreciate my rights, because realistically, look around the world, you have the internet to go and do that with. The rights of are realistic, more so in some countries than others. And the United States of America is a big proponent of. So it's realities you have to accept. And so back in the 1990s, mainly 1994 and 1995, for the specifics, it was one of those, well, if you do that across the board, there's no problem. You don't have to worry about it. As soon as whichever gender turns 18, automatically, well, I cannot be called a hypocrite because I was in the Army at the age of 17 years old. My son, I had signed the paperwork because he wanted to graduate high school early through the accelerated program, and he went through. He let me know he did not complete basic training, but I'm still proud of his effort. He also knew, though, that he has 2 sets of ways, same thing as my daughter, as far as college, but have to graduate high school first, to be capable to go to the military, or utilize the college education grants through both of their biological parents in this scientific, more so wording aspects. So, those are the facts. So, as someone who has had a son and a daughter, and who personally carried in pregnancy to deliver 2 children, 1 of each, and having been a supporter of the LGBTQP community, been involved with it as well as what's supposed to be considered the adult consenting lifestyle, both in reference to BDSM as well as swinger, by the way, on top of that. Well, who better to discuss that, despite the controversy? So, as far as competition, okay, you can take away boys and girls, so that way you don't have the gender pronouns. If you don't want to do that, if it's genuinely about the transgender aspects. And as soon as you strip those gender names, and that includes women's and men's in those particular aspects, and you just go by XX and XY, there's no problem. If I'm the 1990s, how many people complained about Dennis Rodman's hair? As far as the Chicago Bulls. I mean, unless there's a whole bunch of transgenders of whichever side that wouldn't see that as an inspirational point. Now, there is the other aspect. If you want to keep girls and boys and women's and men's sports, then you have the transgendering of 4. Because you have the transgender females to males and males to females. And you still have the technicalities of democratic views of equality in the socially accepted ways, while still having the capitalist aspects. If that's really, truthfully, not been a problem about the draft. However, you could do those, or you do it as XX and XY, as far as competitions, physically. Intellectual games, as far as whatever, video games or computer games, or, if you're into, I don't know if there's competitions about checkers. I know there are competitions about chess. That shouldn't be an issue. Same thing when it comes to dancing. Competitions, X, 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 Y. Or those particular individuals, as far as. And so if the other portions are, well, this person goes by this gender pronoun, and this person goes, and we have all these, even, I would guesstimate the individuals from that LGBTQP from the 1980s and before that are still alive, have to just be what, because let me let you know, if there are those who have been LGBTQP, whatever gender, whatever of the labeling, that are like, okay, you know what, it's a rainbow flag. We don't need to, no, it's in that capacity of, it's an irony that it's the Joe Rogan Experience, episode number 1208, in my opinion, as far as symbolism, or symbolic, or however you want to view it. So, okay, fine. I've utilized different terminologies because of making attempts to explain by because there's so many individuals that have said you have to have just one word. Can you simplify it? Can't you do an acronym for this? Can't you do this? And whining and complaining and all this sort of stuff in person, face-to-face in person. I'm not even going into the online factors, but there are those who know. And so in those particular references, it's very simple. XX, XY, done. You still have the capacity of dressing however you feel comfortable. You still have whatever pronouns as far as, again, pansexual. Okay, I'm a gay bear, top, leather, dominant, biological female. Or I'm a pansexual who is internally a gay bear, but I am a biological, I can't remember which one it is, I think it's XX, that I am. Although, there is the facts of, eating at the Y. In those particular references, and then those leather, dominant, blah, 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 and that just, it just adds more, it's actually more complex, realistically, when you go into that. So, if you just want to simplify, it's XX and XY. Once you really want to go down that rabbit hole, it does get to a certain point. Every rabbit hole has where the rabbit actually sleeps at. No matter how many tunnels, whichever which way, there is still a point where the rabbit gets to their home area where their little fluffy bunny booty is against the back part of, because they don't sleep in the tunnel area. equivalent of XX sports, XY sports, and then, you know, trans XX sports and trans XY sports. You know, the trans XX sports would, you know, however you choose to decipher that. I'll leave that one up for others to figure out which would be, you know, as far as that's concerned. But that's really, you know, at that point, you still acknowledge and accept and so on and so forth. And since we're progressing as much more into the different scientific dimensions, well, there you go. Now, I had known an individual that I warned when I found out what the actual location we were in Dallas, as she had said she wanted it to be her coming out party for her being a professional. Okay, fine. I didn't know it was a LGBTQP club, which I warned. And then there were some obvious, you know, LGBTQPers, obviously obvious, but also in reference to the transgender, but cross-dresser, but drag queen, and so on and so forth. And me, you know, being myself, you know, walking around the club. There was music going on, but I was discussing with what I was told were regulars to the club that night. And they asked what was going on in that corner. And let me clarify how the regular said it. Girl, your outfit is, thank you. What's going on? Because in certain things. And so, what's that doing over there? She is doing a professional promotion of herself and her work. And one in the back part of that particular table said, and then with her nail went and started cleaning her teeth, and I was like, ew. Ooh. And for the clarifications, again, I was born and raised in New Jersey. Grew up going to the 5 boroughs of New York City. I know what that means. And it was, and so, you know, when she finished cleaning her teeth with her pinky nail that had all sorts of rhinestones and glitter. So what's going on? And when she finished, she goes, So us girls, we heard that she says that's a coming out party. And I looked over at them and I said, yeah, I heard that too. As if I'm like a public relations in that regard at that evening. You know, like, it's not my job. Like, I literally just, no, like, you know, just, because I know how this goes. No, because I know how this goes. Because this wasn't the first time I had seen this before. Where a heterosexual, maybe hetero-flexible professional doing that in an LGBTQP specific club. So forget your adult consenting lifestyle conflicts between BDSM and swinger. That's nothing. When you take in consideration the LGBTQP, specifically the male biological, whichever chromosomal aspects of do the professional portion. So, okay, damage control. I can make the joke as far as my thoughts. Damage control, PR time, no. Okay, it's okay. No, it's cool. It's cool. So, no. So she, and I'm not even paid at that point. As far as any PR stuff, let me add that. Just playing that out there. Just saying. Yeah, I was born and raised in New Jersey. So nonetheless, so that's what, maybe she just needs to be educated. I mean, let me use a different word. Maybe she, so, okay. So, alright, okay, so what happened is, she, and then they see the sign that says premiere. And I was like, because then that thing, going and cleaning her teeth with the nails, and I was just, as she started twirling her hair. No, because I had already said that they were from Fort Worth, and so then there's that. So then, okay, because they knew who I am. I mean, I was doing a heavy amount of modeling at that time, and it is as it is, as far as that's concerned, and that's, and I'm not, and before I continue on, because, okay, so one of them had this really cute dress, and it was this little itty bitty, like little kind of right here, and they had these really cute shoes, it was like really like shoes, shiny, and so, and then the nails, and then one had like really crinkly kind of, I mean, I know it's a wig, that's fine. Still envious because I deal with short hair, but not in a negative way, and like, and then the way they had glitter. It was like, Okay, so anyway, and the music hadn't started yet. But like the lights, it was like really low music sounding, so it was like, you heard it a little bit, but not too much. So anyway, okay. Well, the male that I was dating at the time, he's like, hey, and he goes, Susan, instead of Lady Doorbell, because we were dating at the time, and I'm like, yeah, hit a minute. No, not right now. And he's like, well, no, you know what? Go help Renee get stuff out of it. Go. Run is the equivalent. So yeah, no, I mean, I know she said it's a coming out party, but I don't think like she really understands what that meaning is. We're in the state of Texas. I don't know what levels are here. This is like 2011, by the way. And so I'm like, I don't know how, like, I personally, and one that was next to the one with the nails, goes, excuse me, nail? So, and for those who understand this particular lingo, okay? So, that is having a coming out party here. Oh, okay. Okay. So, she's young. And she, I don't know, and I don't know the full background and stuff like that. No, that's fine. drinker? They're like, no, we know a guy here. Okay. So you're on that, correct? Yes, that's on this Facebook. Yeah, okay. So you have a good night, girl. Thank you. Anything else? No. No. No, it's not anything for you to worry about. Whew. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Okay. So the one with the nail. You've been out at the change up, right, girl? Where is that? Kind of dealing with a few thoughts right now. Oh, it's okay. We know you have headaches. Austin? Yeah, I think so. It's okay, girl. We know who you be. That's a good thing, correct? That's great. Fantastic. Okay. So then I made attempts to lay, and then it was completely misconstrued because, I'm not a professional at all. I have my business stuff now. Then I was not, and I'm still not a pro in that regard. So, you know, okay, well, it is what it is. So, and so, I don't honestly, it's 2022. I don't actually understand the reference back then as far as what that had to do with the LGBTQP community and New Jersey or New York City. I have been acknowledging fully in my thoughts, at random times. It's like, what does that mean? What is it? What is it about New Jersey? Because everybody's like, I know how they didn't do it that way at all. And they brought up New York City, and I said, I don't understand. What does this mean? If it has something to do, I have a little bit of Italian in me. I don't know. I'm half Chinese, and then I'm just saying. So yeah. So there's that. But complete, as best as I could, as far as like the irony of damage control, as best as I could, because then I made attempts to speak with Renee's. Then I think they were only boyfriend and girlfriend. It was before the engagement or whatever. And I was like, yeah, so maybe you guys, when you do your announcement stuff, should call it something different. And he's like, no, Lady Dory Bell, we know what we're doing. And I think you should take in consideration another word choice. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. No. So there's words, and words are important, and and so words have meaning, and here, and stop. And then he's like, Patrick, Lady Dory Bell is having issues, and it's like, yeah, but not, but kinda, and stuff. And so then Patrick's like, let's go outside and smoke. But no, but words, and words with words. And so so however that went. Yeah, I don't know. So that is what it is. Yeah. So about that with words. And meaning, and so I brought it up because it was one of those, I could have, especially in reference to the second volume of Paroxysm of the Lotus. I could have easily. I did what I could to pick gender-neutral names regarding portraits of partnerships. I did what I could where, it wasn't necessary. You didn't actually know, you could envision however you could envision, but in reference to Finding B, as well as more specifically that aspect as to Volume 2, there were enough of times where that happened. So, and despite having wound up in Washington State, and that sort of factor of zapping, and my headaches, migraines, and altitude changes in reference to the mountain area and stuff like that. Well, Miss Michelle, or Michelle Visage, and Ruth, and a few of their guests, girl, I hate you, in sort of aspects in comparison, and it was one of those. But I dealt with it. I did. I binge watched where I could because it was one of, and then there were times where I forced myself to watch it on the television screen instead of the laptop computer, which the amount of pain is what it is as far as my headaches and migraines. But it doesn't change the fact that, I could think of guys from way back when, and not that it's really that far of time from now in 2022 to the mid to late 1980s and into the 1990s. But I could remember guys. And it was one of those, I could think of guys that if they survived, how much they would have enjoyed. If they did survive, how much they would have. In the capacities of, because I knew about certain things back then. And so there was one particular guy who he did not survive after 1991. Because of what was going on at the time. And he was one of my favorites. And his favorite colors were black and red. And so, for those who might remember him, no matter what he dressed up in, it didn't matter. All of his hers, feather boas were always either black or red. Or black and red if he could find them. And then every time he dressed up, all of his shoes were always black or red. Or black and red. All of the sort of outfit gowns and stuff like that, they were always black and red. Or black or red. And so, despite certain things, honoring ancestor in different sorts of capacities, those, I don't know if there's anybody who would know who I'd be referring to, because everybody has their own situation as far as colors. That's kind of, that particular individual is in later times after waking up from my coma after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, and getting involved in the supposed to be adult consenting lifestyle, but more so, especially in scuba diving, well, black and white. And yeah, because I already got the red. As far as my hair. But yeah. So, with regulations regarding that. I just kind of figured I'd bring that up. And then the irony as far as David is concerned. And David having done the huge display in Freehold Raceway Mall and stuff like that. All of the ornaments were essentially red and white, or there was silver and gold and stuff like that. But certain areas of a few of the ornaments had a specific thin black line that he hand painted himself. He had some of the employees do what they could to assist and all that sort of taping it to get as best as the possibilities for that. And so I don't remember which year, acknowledging that. I'm fairly certain it was the 1990s, if I remember correctly. So, so, but in reference to the difference between intellectual competition, which is, essentially an open aspect of, regarding discussions and philosophical views, spiritual views, religious views, so on and so forth in a peaceful, balanced way. There's also the differences between the intellectual capacities and the physical competition aspects, in my opinion. And so, there's those options, which that's not for me to officially figure out officially, but those are some things that possibly could be taken into consideration as far as the naming. So if you can see it in reference to Super Bowls. They do it by the Latin numerals. And so, I don't know the official, I guess it's the poll work or something like that in reference to the popular viewpoints in that reference, but just saying, that's something to take in consideration because it is a truthful factor. Biologically, despite whichever viewpoint, it has to do with the bone structure as well as the strength of the bones as far as that particular biological aspect. So I would guesstimate, if there were those who looked into the bone marrow factors as far as some females, biologically, I would guesstimate, would have certain strengths, yes. But biologically, males are going to have a stronger bone structure. Not always, but a good portion of the time. And so that's just, healthy life. That's important. Genuine well-being. Okay, so I'm a mom, and, I can be a little momish. Smidgen. A lot. Kind of this way before actually having children myself. Literally. So that's just something to take in consideration. And so you guys have a good day. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel. Share the official link to my official YouTube video. Thank you for tuning in. Go to my website, www.susanmuling.com. LadyDorybell.com is the same in that reference, or www.ladydorybell.com, and Dory with an I, because that's all I know how to draw. It's literally the main, I was being artistic-y-ish, because that's in a detailed format. It's been since I was a child. I could do pastels and all sorts of charcoal-ish regarding drawing stuff. When it comes to anything else, as far as drawing, painting, whatever, fine. But drawing, back as a child, then again, I also had seen a few things, since I was very young. Mr. Art from Asher Holmes Elementary School, he had noticed that. He had noticed that from my doodles and stuff like that. And I only draw eyes, with all the other aspects of different factors in art, and all I could explain was, I know them very detailed. And he was like, yeah, they're great. And he went into he actually spoke with Mike and Anna about getting me into an art painting class. But his thing was, well, that's such a detailed eye. But why do you only draw one eye? 'Cause that's usually what I have seen. And so it's an eye, and it's from different angles, whether it's a side view or a front view. He had actually had a field day when it came to the first ceramic piece I made. And out of clay, and I make this rainbow-shaped fish, and it has, yellow for where the face is, and then a red body, and I can make fun of my hair, and I'm half Chinese, I can make fun of this now. And he was surprised because of how I had actually carved individual scales. And he couldn't, he went on about it because he was just, that is extremely intricate. Why would you actually get to what, do you have an aquarium? No. Do you, whatever, well, go out to the ocean. And he's like, oh, so you've gone to restaurants with it? No, I went swimming in the ocean. And it was one of the little fishies I got to see. It's a cute little fish. It's a big fish, but it's a little cute little fishy. I don't know. I have to think, it's kind of funny because there's I think it's called the parrotfish, and the parrotfish is kind of similar to that. And then I actually saw a fish, I think it was out in the Florida Keys. And I took my son, my daughter, and my niece out there. It's kind of funny because there's a bridge in a few areas from Florida to the Florida Keys. That's kind of irony. I just kind of thought about that. Now, in 2022, compared to when I was there in 2009. That's kind of irony. And that's kind of like the shape. I don't know if that particular, and it's irony because there is an actual fish that I took a picture of that has the red and the coloration, including the scales and stuff like that, and it has a bright yellow eye. So that's kind of irony now that I think about it now on the 9th of April, 2022. So thanks for tuning in. You guys have a great day. Oh, make sure to subscribe and share my official YouTube video link and stuff like that.